All right. So thank you also for having us with you, and I appreciate the interest in our solution for the next general lighting. I'm here together with my colleague in this webinar, who is Dr. Elio Kim, our key expert for LED technology, including human-centric lighting. We will do the presentation together, so I will start now. And as I already said, we want to talk about the next general lighting, which we strongly believe is the human-centric lighting approach. Now, when we look at our daily life, we can see that lighting is crucial for our well-being. It has many direct and indirect effects onto us, onto our human body, and one of them is a very visual one. It's the ideal melatonin level that we should have over one day, over 24 hours. Now, the curve that I've put here is the ideal melatonin level curve, which is depending on the natural lighting. Actually, natural lighting is the light that we evolutionary as a human being are very much used to. Now, the only problem here comes now that we have spent more and more time indoors over the last 100 years. And by now, we can say that more than 80% of our time is being spent indoors, which has a strong effect onto us, and which can be also measured in our melatonin level over the day. So we don't reach, we don't lower the melatonin level over daytime. We have a shift in the evening. We go to sleep later. We still have to wake up early in the morning. We don't build up as much melatonin as we should have at night. Now, when we look at light, how to improve that? Let's first look at light and what are the effects of lighting. So we can distinguish two major effects of lighting. One is the visual effect, which we can measure in lumen, which we call the photopic sensitivity. It is peaking at 550 nanometers. So that's the visual effect. On the other hand, we also have non-visual effects in lighting, which we call the melanopic flux. And our melanopic sensitivity curve is peaking at about 480 nanometers. So flux that is accumulating within that sensitivity curve has a direct effect onto our well-being on at daytime. It's activating and it's increasing our concentration level. Now, I think this is nothing too new to all of us. The question here now is how should we take this information and put it to work for us? When we, for example, look at the office day, for example, and just a random example here, should we move from 4,000 to 5,000 to 6,500 Kelvin? Or should we increase the brightness to achieve a higher melanopic flux, a higher amount of light within that activating area? And at this point, I would like to pose that question to my colleague, Dr. Elio Kim.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Alex, for the introduction. I think your question can go to all the audience today. 4,000 Kelvin, 5,000 Kelvin, 5,000 Kelvin, the latter being cooler in visual perception compared to, 4,000. So it's kind of, easier to recognize that like a cooler and brighter light might improve the, cognitive capabilities and then wake you up and improve your awakeness. So next slide, please. I can give you a list of research reports and papers from academia and all the government agencies on the effect of the lighting condition to learning abilities and performance and all vitality of the subjects who are under this research. Every one of them ends up with the same conclusion that blue-rich light, white light promotes such functional aspects of human beings. Then what's the reason that we don't have as many as like a cooler CCT lighting or brighter lighting for alertness in offices and schools as 4,000 Kelvin, more comfortable lighting condition? I think it's probably because it's not really visually pleasing. So we can look at this effects in this view graph as here. So we have light color on the x-axis and the brightness of the lighting on the y-axis. So let's assume that we have 500 lux lighting condition with correlated color temperature 4,000 Kelvin as the initial condition. We can improve the alertness by having more spectral power under the melanopic sensitivity curve around 400 nanometer cyan region. And then we can kind of tune the CCT of this lighting to a cooler side in order to make the overlap of this light spectrum with the melanopic sensitivity curve, more enhanced. On the other hand, we can also increase the brightness of the lighting in order to achieve the same purpose. And this one actually will make the lighting very sharp, cool, and it may be not very comfortable to your eyes. So we originally thought of a light spectrum that can achieve this kind of goal without necessarily increase the CCT or the brightness of the lighting. Then we need the third tuning knob here that we can play with, which is we call the MP ratio, which is the melanopic to photopic ratio. This is a metric that shows how much light intensity we have under this melanopic sensitivity curve compared to how much light energy under normal photopic sensitivity curve, which is more familiar to all of you. All right. So we now can achieve a lot better lighting condition by having these 3 different tuning knobs rather than just 2. Let's move on to the next slide to show you kind of magic here. These 2 pictures look very identical at first glance, maybe. Okay, then let's give it a second glance. Do you see any difference? Probably no. So am I playing a trick or something here? Not really. Let's look at the next slide to have an idea what I'm gonna have to say here. So in fact, this is the lighting experience room where we performed an extensive clinical test. We compared the participants' concentration level by giving them a standardized concentration level test, which is called the D2 test. The result turned out that subjects under the lighting condition on the left-hand side scored 3% higher compared to the situation where they were spending time on the right-hand side lighting condition. So very strange. Is this real? So we double-checked the result by giving them another type of test, which is a Sudoku puzzle. Maybe some of you must be familiar with Sudoku puzzle. It's kind of a game, playing with numbers. Now the gap actually enlarged to 10%, surprisingly. And we wanted to know, so why is this happening? So what makes a difference? Let's move on to the next slide, Alex. So let's look at these 2 different spectra. So here we can find the key. The result that we got from the lighting experience room was because of the difference of these 2 spectra. So these 2 spectra overall look pretty much the same, except the fact that we have a very rich cyan portion of the spectrum given by double blue peak, a shorter blue peak and longer blue peak in this region of blue cyan region. Whereas on your right-hand side, you see just a familiar conventional white LED spectrum, which is a little bit of trough around that cyan region, centered on 480 nanometer. So even though they look identical visually, the minor changes of this spectrum can give very meaningful changes over your body's reaction without really noticing anything from your visual perception of the lighting condition. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So this is what we explained, what I explained a moment ago. So you see the melanoptic sensitivity curve, and there was a trough for normal conventional white lighting. And for the energetic moments, we love to use the lighting spectrum on your left-hand side, that we increase the cyan portion to boost up the melanoptic suppression effects by delivering this light signal to your circadian control system, which is located in your brain, actually. And for the relaxing moment, however, we can play a different game. We can reduce, or we maybe deplete the cyan region of the spectrum by tuning the phospho-mixtures, and then we can create a light spectrum that you see on the right-hand side. Next slide, please. More specifically, we can look at the MP ratio of this new LED that we call LM302N-Day, which is like a 3030 standard middle power LED with dual blue dyes inside. The MP ratio that we got from this new spectrum of the LED can be seen on the right-hand side in the chart, from 300 Kelvin all the way to 6500 Kelvin, where we compare the MP ratio of LM302N-Day, which is represented by blue bars, compared to the MP ratio of conventional LEDs, which is represented by the gray bars. As you see here, the MP ratio of LM302N-Day has about 20 to 30% higher MP ratio compared to conventional white LED. This means that even though you are using like a same or similar brightness, luminance of the lighting, you can suppress your melatonin level by making use of this new spectrum during daytime or work hours, achieving much higher concentration and improves your cognitive capability. All right, next slide, please. What implication does this have? So let's take an example of 4000 Kelvin lighting condition. Now we introduce the metric of melanopic EDI, which represents for melanopic equivalent daylight illuminance. We just, translate the melanopic suppression, melatonin suppression level of a given spectrum compared to that of the standard D65 light source, which is similar to the daylight. So regardless of the illuminance level, you always get 24% higher melanopic EDI when you use LM302N-Day compared to the condition you use just conventional white LED. So let's go to the next slide. We have an immediate conclusion here that you can stay alert and focus on your task by getting some help from the energizing lighting spectrum. And in doing so, you don't always have to push the CCT to the coolest side. You can create a lot of different lighting conditions that you see in these photographs. For example, you can still use like a warm white LED, and you can still improve your alertness and focus by creating the energizing spectrum, even using like a warm white LED. And you see like a school classroom lit by maybe 4,000 Kelvin natural white light. And on your right hand side, you see like a lab areas and factories where they use cool white LEDs in order to maximize the concentration level during work hours. And important thing is that you don't really recognize anything from the spectral tuning that we provided here. Okay, let's move on to the next slide, where we just slightly touch upon the theme of LM302N that gives lower MP ratio compared to conventional white LED. This one gives much deeper and wider cyan gap along the wavelengths of this spectrum. That gives lower MP ratio, as you see in the right-hand side in the graph, given from 1800 Kelvin all the way to 4000 Kelvin. So the LM302N MP ratio given by the blue bar here has about 10 to 20% lower values compared to the gray bars that represent conventional LEDs MP ratio. And this one minimizes the disturbance of artificial lighting, maybe during evening and nighttime. So you just minimize the effect of the artificial lighting to your natural circadian rhythm, and you can live much better natural lifestyle by changing the lighting spectrum in this way. And this one also is provided in 3030 form factor middle power LED, which is kind of industry standard in lighting industry. Okay, next slide. And you can imagine that this type of new spectrum of the LED lighting can be very beneficial when you use them in residential areas and hospitality facilities such as hotels, and especially for medical facilities and healthcare facilities. Imagine that you see these people with some limited capabilities of moving in and out of building whenever they want. So they lack enough sunlight exposure during daytime, and they may suffer from improper lighting condition during nighttime, suffering from some sleep disorders. And by optimizing the lighting spectrum for day and night, they may get much better in their health and their well-being. And this is another dimension that the whole lighting industry can move onto and try to give higher value to all the users of those lightings. All right.
Elio, sorry, just to interrupt you quickly here. So now we spoke a lot about the biological effects, about the MP ratio, about MEDI index to the lighting, which is all very, well, logical. The question is now, and well, in our title, we made a very bold statement. It's the next general lighting. Now, how can we get this human-centric lighting concept into the shape of general lighting?
Okay, you're right. When it comes to the practical lighting installation, what's important is not only the circadian metric that we showed here, like MP ratio or MEDI, but also all the other figures of merit, such as efficacy of lighting and reliability, color quality, and eye safety are all important. So we try to create lighting spectrum, which has a very good balance between these very important 5 different metrics. Let me briefly, show you how we created this lighting spectrum here compared to other approaches that we might have taken. So the first one, the lighting spectrum of LM302N day is created by 2 different, indium gallium nitride dyes that emit conventional blue and cyan region, another second blue in cyan region. And in your chart, you see that there's like a blue light hazard function and melanopic sensitivity function and photopic sensitivity function that are being overlapped with the lighting spectrum. And we analyzed these 5 different metrics to see how balanced this spectrum is. Okay, so LM302ND has the best balance between the MP ratio and efficacy and all the other metrics. You know, by having the highest cyan peak, as you see in the spectrum, we can deliver the highest MP ratio compared to any other solutions available currently. But increasing the MP ratio always, you know, needs some compromisation with the lighting efficacy. So we try to, you know, keep the efficacy as high as possible by still giving much higher MP ratio. But there's about efficacy penalty of 10 to 15% compared to, you know, nearly conventional style of lighting. But this one has no problem with the lifetime, and it's not super exceptional in the color quality represented by the CRI, but at least we can meet CRI 80 by this spectrum that I show here. In terms of eye safety, this is the safest type of light spectrum because we are shifting our short blue to the longer blue that avoids the blue light hazard function, as you see in the graph. However, if we look at the near UV solution, this is the type of lighting spectrum that maximizes the color quality, CRI, by pumping the phosphors using the very short wavelengths near UV light. And then you deliver blue, green, and red using different types of phosphor mixture. And by doing so, you don't really deliver the highest MP ratio, but you can still improve the MP ratio to a certain range. Problem is that by, you know, changing the photons of very high energy in the short wavelength region all the way to the longer wavelength regions that are being emitted by the phosphors, you are losing a lot of light energy of those, you know, light conversion from short wavelength to longer wavelength. And that gives very poor efficacy. That's the problem. And there's another more serious problem. The short wavelengths near UV photons are so energetic that it degrades the packaging material of the LED much faster than other types of LED does. Because of that, it's only about half in the lifetime compared to the other solution. But as I said, CRI is great, and eye safety is actually a little bit more riskier in eye safety because it has a stronger blue contents on the blue light hazard function. The third approach is kind of a minimal type of improvement in the MP ratio. But this one actually gives you with the potentially higher efficacy because it didn't really sacrifice anything in order to achieve a little bit of higher MP ratio. So efficacy-wise, this is the best approach. Lifetime-wise is no problem. However, the CRI is just similar to what we achieved with the LM302ND, and the eye safety doesn't become much of a problem. The only problem with the third approach is that it's just similar to conventional white LED light. Okay, so I gave you an overview of how actually we created this LM302ND spectrum and approach it this way to deliver the highest MP ratio that gives the most natural effects of sunlight during daytime without delivering the adverse effects that might have been delivered by taking different approaches. Okay.
Right. Thank you, Elio. I think one of the crucial sentences was actually to not only focus on the target deliverable we wanted to change, but also to keep in mind that we have to balance all the other measurables which are important for general lighting.
Right.
Let me maybe wrap it up a little bit so to see what it looks like in a more schematic view onto the portfolio, and what does it actually mean, and also for the whole value chain when we speak about human-centric lighting. I don't personally really like it when we put the word solution onto any title, because it's not us giving the full solution, it's not the luminaire manufacturer giving the full solution, but it's all of us together. We as Samsung can provide something like a spectrum, like the components, and there is a module, there is a luminaire, there's a control, there's a lighting designer, and in the end there's an architect as well. So all together need to work together for the next general lighting. What we can do is provide the components and provide what we can do very good, the right spectrum, an improved and an innovative spectrum. So what you see here is the comparison of a conventional LED range of CCTs with the day spectrum and the night spectrum, and their effect onto the melatonin suppression, in this case with the MEDI metrics. Now, just to give you an idea, what does mean human-centric lighting, or what it could mean, because we don't want to say you have to go into tunable white or something else. So just to give you an idea, usually when we speak about human-centric lighting, we would see 2,700 to 6,500 Kelvin tunable white. Now, with this spectrum, we can actually pull in the cold white. How about going only to 5,000 Kelvin? Maybe even go down to 2,200 Kelvin for the evening hours. That could make sense. Maybe something more disruptive. How about creating a tunable white luminaire within one CCT? For example, 3,500 Kelvin. You have it in your office, and then you have a certain period of a few hours over daytime where you increase the melanopic effect. Maybe even not even doing tunable white. You can also use this spectrum for static solutions, like in this case a 4,000 Kelvin or just a 2,700 Kelvin. So what I'm trying to say here is there is no one fits all solution when we speak about human-centric lighting, but a contribution with a toolbox, which is now an additional spectrum that gives you not only the brightness and the CCT to work with, but also the spectrum as a third pillar in the next lighting design. So,
dear Alex, I don't want to interrupt you, but it's already time. Can you repeat that, please? Yes, sorry.
At the end, as you just...
So I'm the timekeeper. I'm the timekeeper. Sorry, interrupting you. That's a great presentation, but you can...
That's perfect. We are at the end.